Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack, analyze, and completely deconstruct one of the most famous pieces of musical theater literally ever written. I'm talking about the massive showstopper from the 1978 musical Evita, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. Now, whether you know it from the original stage production, or those huge pop covers, or maybe the cinematic adaptation, this melody is just instantly recognizable. But, as you'll see, the story behind the song and what it's actually doing in the narrative is incredibly complex and, honestly, deeply fascinating.
Okay, let's dive into this. When most people hear this sweeping, tear-jerking melody, they immediately assume it's just this tragic, emotional centerpiece. It sounds like a woman giving a heartbreaking, vulnerable goodbye. But we really need to challenge that assumption right out of the gate. We are looking at a total masterstroke of character building by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. So is it really a sad farewell, or are we actually listening to a calculated, masterful piece of political spin?
The surface-level illusion here is that it's this heartfelt apology. It feels like a vulnerable moment from a woman who is just baring her soul to her country. But the true reality of this scene? It's a brilliant, highly calculated piece of political theater, and it's being performed by one of history's most controversial and polarizing figures, right at the absolute peak of her influence. To truly grasp how this song operates, we've got to understand exactly where and when it's happening.
To set the stakes, let's travel back to 1946. Eva, affectionately called Evita by her followers, has just helped her husband, Juan Peron, win the presidency of Argentina. The energy in the country at this moment is absolutely electric. Picture this. She steps out onto the iconic balcony of the Casa Rosada, the presidential palace in Buenos Aires. She's looking out over this massive, roaring crowd of supporters, and she has to deliver a message that will permanently cement their loyalty to her and her husband's brand new regime.
But who exactly is she talking to? She is addressing the descamisados. That translates to the shirtless ones, basically the massive crowd of working-class supporters of the Perons. And here's where the psychological tightrope walk really begins. See, Eva herself has a pretty remarkable backstory. She transformed from a poor, illegitimate child growing up in rural Argentina into this incredibly wealthy, powerful first lady. She has made it to the very top of the food chain. And this brilliantly illustrates the immense tension of the moment. Picture Eva Perón standing up on that balcony, literally dripping in extreme wealth. We're talking Christian Dior fashion, wildly expensive jewels, the whole shebang. And looking right up at her are the working-class descamisados who are just struggling to make ends meet. She is a woman of immense power and luxury, and yet she has to look down at this crowd and convince them that she is still one of them. I mean, how do you even begin to bridge a gap that wide?
Well, you bridge it with words. Her lyrics aren't just pretty poetry. The musical frames them as highly effective manipulation tactics. The song sounds like a gentle apology, but it really functions as a psychological masterclass. We're going to break down 3 specific strategies she uses to win this crowd over: the illusion of reluctance, deflecting criticism, and the use of meaningless platitudes.
So the crucial point is how she frames her own rise to power. She sings, "I had to let it happen, I had to change," right? This is the illusion of reluctance. She's painting herself as this humble servant who is just sort of forced into the spotlight. But the audience watching the musical knows this contradicts the entire first act. We just watched her ruthlessly step on anyone she needed to along the way. Within the world of the play, she's literally rewriting her own history in real time.
Next, she addresses the diamond and crested elephant in the room, her visible wealth. She literally tells this impoverished crowd to look past her fortune and fame, claiming that these things are just illusions. This is a textbook example of deflecting criticism. If we translate this lyric from political spin into plain English, it's her clever way of saying, hey, don't be mad that I'm rich and covered in jewels, I'm doing all of this for you. She miraculously manages to make her extreme wealth sound like a heavy burden she carries for the people. It's wild. And what does she actually promise them during this soaring, epic speech? Absolutely nothing. Lyricist Tim Rice designed this song to be a string of emotional, but entirely empty, political promises. There is zero actual policy laid out in these lyrics. None. She doesn't tell them how she's going to improve their lives, or fix the economy, or change the laws. It relies entirely on high-stakes, emotional manipulation to win the crowd's blind devotion. She is selling them a feeling, not a plan.
But, lyrics alone don't create a showstopper. The words need the music.
And Andrew Lloyd Webber's composition does a massive amount of the heavy lifting here. He composed this sweeping, romantic melody, but he deliberately set it in a minor key. This is a brilliant musical choice because it forcefully draws sympathy from the audience. The minor key evokes this deep sadness and longing, which kind of forces us to feel emotionally connected to Eva, even when our logical brains know the character is actively manipulating the crowd. Now, what's really interesting about this is the incredible musical plot twist. The melody of Don't Cry for Me Argentina isn't actually original to this scene, it's a recycled theme. Webber uses the exact same melody earlier in the show for a song called Oh What a Circus. But that song is sung by Che, the cynical narrator, who aggressively mocks the public for mourning Eva's death. Webber intentionally uses the exact same tune to directly contrast Eva's beautiful, heartfelt lies on the balcony with Che's harsh, aggressive truths. It's just a genius piece of theatrical mirroring.
The impact of this song obviously didn't stay confined to the theater either. Its immense pop culture legacy spans 3 completely different, fascinating eras. Starting from a cemetery in Argentina, making its way to the UK pop charts, and finally landing on the Hollywood silver screen.
Let's start with the title itself. You might assume Tim Rice just came up with this iconic hook entirely on his own, right? Actually, no. It has a real-world historical basis. The famous phrase was inspired by an actual epitaph on a bronze plaque at Eva Perón's grave in the La Recoleta Cemetery in Buenos Aires. The plaque was gifted by the city's taxi drivers union, and it roughly translates to, "Don't cry for me, Argentina, I remain quite near to you." The writers took a piece of genuine public mourning and literally spun it into theatrical gold.
And here is a number that might surprise you. 1. Before the stage show even existed, Don't Cry for Me Argentina was already a massive pop hit. The creators actually weren't sure if a musical about a controversial South American dictator's wife would succeed at all, so they tested the waters by releasing Evita as a rock opera concept album in 1976. Sung by Julie Covington, this track skyrocketed all the way to #1 on the UK charts. It was a certified smash hit before an actor ever stepped foot on a stage balcony.
Fast forward to 1996, and the song reaches a completely new generation. Madonna starred in the highly anticipated film adaptation, but she really had to fight to get there. She famously campaigned for the role by writing this impassioned 4-page letter to director Alan Parker. She argued that she was the only person alive who could truly understand Evita's intense drive, her immense ambition, and the relentless public scrutiny she faced. Madonna saw the parallels between pop stardom and political theater, and her rendition introduced the anthem to millions worldwide.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen how this song works musically, historically, and psychologically. But taking a step back from the theater and looking at the real world, it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder. How easily can a sweeping melody or a perfectly crafted speech mask an entirely empty political promise? It's a huge testament to the power of presentation for sure, and a reminder of the powerful and sometimes dangerous intersection of politics, PR, and entertainment. Thanks so much for joining me as we unpack this incredible piece of history and art. Keep questioning what you hear, and I'll see you in the next one.